Hello everyone, it's Steenberg Avenue, I'm Eric. My last major video was ranking every Cedar Fair roller coaster I've been on. That was 104 roller coasters. Now let's go even further. 120 Six Flags roller coasters ranked. Before I begin, note there are plenty I have not been on, but because it was 120, I think there's enough to do a full ranking. So where I have not been. First off, Six Flags Mexico. I've never been there. And then there's Wonder Woman Flight of Courage at Magic Mountain. Never been on that. Wonder Woman Golden Lasso Coaster at Fiesta, Texas. Note that that is a clone of Railblazer, and Railblazer would be number 5 on the list if that were a Six Flags ride, so maybe that could be a gauge. Dr. Diabolical's Cliffhanger, Aquaman Power Wave, Harley Quinn Crazy Train at Great Adventure, Boomerang Coast to Coaster at Six Flags Fiesta, Texas, Mini Mine Train at Over Texas, Flash Vertical Velocity at Discovery Kingdom, but let's be honest, no one's been on that, Sidewinder Safari, Cobra at Discovery Kingdom, American Thunder at St. Louis unfortunately needed a new part when I went. Boomerang at Six Flags St. Louis, I didn't get around to that one. Mind Eraser at Six Flags America, Roar at America, Silver Bullet and Diamondback at Frontier City, Alpine Bobsled, which is now closed, and let's be honest, no one got in that one either, Flashback at Great Escape, and finally, a bunch of kiddie coasters. Alright, with all that out of the way, let's get into the actual ranking of 120 Six Flags roller coasters. Last place, number 120, is Ednor L'Attaque at La Ronde. The first few rides here will be terrible ones. The ones so bad I'd rather ride an average kiddie coaster, because these are so painful or similar. And Ednor is my least favorite roller coaster, period. It's awful. Painful, nothing about it is redeeming besides the setting, and even that isn't that great unless you're off-ride. So definitely last place. Number 119 is Mind Eraser at Six Flags Darien Lake. A slight step up as far as Vekoma SLCs go, but very, very slight, so very, very low on the list. Number 118 is Lil Devil Coaster. No kiddie coaster has a right to be this terrible. I went on this with my younger brother a little while back, and it was so painful, and it goes through multiple laps so you get extra pain. It's terrible. I cannot believe it is this bad. Number 117 is Screaming Eagle at Six Flags St. Louis. This is my least favorite wooden coaster, period. I genuinely cannot believe this ride doesn't kill people every single day because of how much I got jackhammered on both my rides. The first part is okay, the first drop and airtime hill are not terrible, and the setting is great. There are redeeming elements, but the worst stuff is actually unbearable. And I hear so many say they get good rides, smooth rides, so perhaps I got really unlucky, but the 2 rides I did get on it were some of the worst I've ever experienced on any roller coaster. Number 116 is Green Lantern at Six Flags Great Adventure. Not the worst Green Lantern to ever grace Six Flags parks, but certainly my least favorite B&M ever. This stand-up coaster is rough, the layout is not terrible as far as stand-ups go, and the stand-up ride model is kinda overhated, but this one is especially painful, and from a manufacturer known for its great smooth rides especially, it stands out and is terrible. Number 115 is Canyon Blaster at Great Escape. A mind-blowing ride in pacing. It is very, very slow in the second half. When you watch the thing off-ride, if you see some of the footage I put on right now, you may think it's slowed down. It's not. I did not slow down the footage, it is actually that badly paced. The ride doesn't look great either, and it is still somehow quite rough despite the poor speed. So yeah, not great. Number 114 is Gotham City Gauntlet Escape from Arkham Asylum at Six Flags New England. Besides having the worst name of any roller coaster, this wild mouse clears the rest as the worst. You get slammed at the side of the seat, it's a janky, there's a tiny bit of theming which is nice, but besides that, there is nothing I like about it. Number 113 is Flashback at Six Flags New England. This is my least favorite of the Vekoma boomerangs I've ever done. Disregarding the terrible Goliath that also used to be at this park, but based on the sit-down boomerangs, this one is bad. Really bad. But nothing particularly spectacular to note, so it's just rough moving on. Number 112 is Steam and Demon at Great Escape, getting an edge for at least having a decent vertical loop that's not that painful, but it is a short, underwhelming aero looper that is rougher than most, and I don't love aero loopers in general, but this one is definitely among the weakest. Number 111 is Firebird at Six Flags America. Another terrible B&M. This one is not very intense at all. It's a very low tier B&M in terms of thrill, and in terms of roughness, it is high tier. It is almost on the level as Green Lantern, so I don't like that at all, and it's definitely not a great ride at all, saved only by the name being alright and the colors being pretty cool. Those are the 10 terrible roller coasters in the chain. Number 110 is Sprocket Rockets at Six Flags Great America. A kiddie coaster, one of the better ones. It is fun. It's tame, but much better than the terrible ones I just named. Number 109, Catwoman's Whip at Six Flags New England. A longer train, besides that, it's just a bit more fun, I guess. It's very similar. Number 108 is Little Dipper at Six Flags Great America. A kiddie wooden coaster, fairly unique. I might take it over the Woodstock Express clones at Cedar Fair parks. It's a solid ride, but still very tame. Number 107 is Joker Funhouse Coaster at Six Flags Over Georgia. Very fun ride. Theming is solid, thrills are decent for what it is, setting is great, overall, solid for sure. Number 106 is Steel Lasso at Frontier City. A family invert, very tame, not much more intense than these kiddie coasters I'm naming, but it is still pretty fun, so it gets a bit of a higher spot. Number 105 is Kong at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. When it's not going upside down, Kong is a very decent ride. It's certainly intense, and it's not the roughest SLC by any means. I even dare say the final inversions were okay. It's still bad, but there's enough good to sort of counteract that, and it's not the worst thing out there. Number 104 is Demon at Six Flags Great America. Compared to the California's Great America one, this one is terrible. It is very bumpy, the corkscrews are some of my least favorite of any roller coaster, but the theming is nice, other parts aren't as bad, so it's still okay, but still leaning toward the negative experience side. Number 103 is Viper at Six Flags Magic Mountain. Many love this one. I hear it's one of the best arrows from so many people, but I thought it was very bad. It is grand in size, I'll give it that, but there was not a single inversion I enjoyed, and the return trip is quite painful. There is a bit I admire about it, but it's still one that I can't quite get behind the hype for. Number 102 is Le Boomerang at La Ronde. La Ronde's Boomerang is not special. It's painful. There are much better ones out there. Moving on. Number 101, very similar, Boomerang Coast to Coaster at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. It is pretty much the same ride. And number 100 is Boomerang Coast to Coaster at Six Flags Darien Lake. Also, same ride. Number 99 is Judge Roy's Scream at Six Flags Over Texas. A classic wooden coaster, not nearly as painful as Screamin' Eagle, but more painful than most. It's been a while since I went on this one. I'll give it another chance someday, but for now, it's down here. Number 98 is Gold Rusher at Six Flags Magic Mountain. A weaker Aero Mine Train. The setting is cool but not super well utilized, and I think it's much bumpier than most others, so it ranks down here. Number 97, River King Mine Train at Six Flags St. Louis. Slight step up, the final drop is interesting, but the ride is just as painful, barely more interesting, slightly better. Number 96 is Wildcat at Frontier City. A very, very tame roller coaster. It's a wooden one, meant for families clearly, but it doesn't really have any airtime. There's a slight rattle, it's not that painful, but it exists. The ride is pretty short, and my favorite part, honestly, is the queue, where you have a bunch of other stats about other better wooden coasters, but it's not a bad ride, it's just very eh. Number 95 is Runaway Mine Train at Six Flags Great Adventure. A very interesting one. I like the setting of it, the layout is a bit different, the airtime you get is actually pretty solid, I like it quite a bit. Very good one, as far as some mine trains go, and we'll get to some much better ones later. Number 94 is Dahlonega Mine Train, pronounced it right that time, I think, at Six Flags Over Georgia. Dahlonega Mine Train has a very, very interesting setting at a pit, pretty much. The final drop is terrifying, but not that fun. Other than that, it's a decent mine train through and through, good ride overall. Number 93 is Moto Coaster at Darien Lake. Moto Coaster is fun, the seating position is not the most comfortable, the concept is cool, the thrills are average, it is an okay family coaster. Number 92 is La Vibora at Six Flags Over Texas. I much prefer Reptilian at King's Dominion as far as these bobsled coasters go. This one is a bit jankier and not quite as thrilling or fun. That said, it's still decent. Number 91 is Pandemonium at Six Flags New England. I love spinning coasters. This one is unfortunately hindered by the shin guards and the restraints being particularly bad. I dare say, the worst restraint in the park. And for some, that's saying a lot. Still fun, but held back a bit. Number 90 is Roadrunner Express at Six Flags Fiesta, Texas. Roadrunner Express is set on the quarry wall. There are theming elements. Very nice. This one is still pretty janky, but the layout has its solid moments, and I'd say it is a stronger Aero Mine train overall. Number 89 is Skull Mountain at Six Flags Great Adventure. A fascinating facade, beautiful. Inside, no theming, a little disappointing. The ride itself has moderate thrills. There's really only one part that's all that thrilling to me, but it is a decent family coaster, and it goes up above some of the others so far. Number 88 is Toboggan Nordique at Ronde. A unique wild mouse. I like the theme of this one a lot. The turns are tight and intense, but not painful. And overall, definitely a stronger wild mouse. Quite fun. I do recommend getting on it, even though the line gets pretty long. Number 87 is Dragon at Ronde. Dragon is similar to Skull Mountain, but there are at least some theming elements inside, and I wish there were more, but what they have is good, so it is a pretty good family coaster. Number 86 is the Dark Knight coaster at Six Flags Great Adventure. A fun theme to the Dark Knight, of course. Dark Knight's a great movie, and I think the cool stuff here is awesome. But unfortunately, not a lot of this cool stuff, as I say, works. It is very broken and in need of maintenance. That said, it is one of the most comfortable Wild Mouse coasters ever, so overall, very good. Number 85 is the Dark Knight coaster at Six Flags Great America. My favorite because it has working effects. It is one of my favorite Wild Mouse coasters, period. I think it's awesome, and there's a certain surprise at some point I won't spoil, but it's a blast that it works at least on one of the Dark Knight coasters. Number 84 is Blue Hawk at Six Flags Over Georgia. Not bad, pretty tame for a looping coaster, looks unique when you're off-ride, it's not painful, but it's not super interesting. Number 83 is Viper at Darien Lake. Viper has grand elements, excellent intensity, but super painful corkscrews. Not as painful as some others I named so far, but even though the other inversions are pretty good, these hold it back quite a bit. Number 82 is Riddler Mindbender at Six Flags Over Georgia. What used to be possibly worthy of top 50 has fallen a lot. There are now trims on the ride that pretty much stop the ride, ruining the pacing. It's much more intense, but also much more rough. And when I say intense, I pretty much mean bad intensity. The old ride had great pacing, it was awesome. I don't know why certain changes were made. Maybe it was a safety thing, but this ride is definitely a massive downgrade from what it used to be. Number 81 is Le Mans at La Ronde. An underrated wooden coaster. It's not rough outside of one turn, and it's not that mid, as some say. It's not the tamest out there, and it's very scenic. I like it overall. I wish it raced, because there are dueling tracks, but it doesn't really do that anymore. But I still had a pretty good time with it, even if it's not anything amazing. Number 80 is Pandemonium at Six Flags Fiesta, Texas. A different layout, some of the others are a bit better in this regard, but the layout's still not bad, setting is cool, and of course, I mentioned I like spinning coasters, so it's still pretty good. Number 79 is Whizzer at Six Flags Great America, a classic for many, of course. A very unique family coaster, I like it a lot. There is plenty of charm, though there are other family coasters I think are a bit better in terms of the thrill aspect that I look for, but still, a very fun one. Number 78 is New Revolution at Six Flags Magic Mountain. A very historic one, the vertical loop is awesome, the rest of the ride is meandering but scenic, so it is a now better Schwarzkopf looper than the formerly excellent Riddler Mindbender, which is quite a disappointment for that one. Number 77, Pandemonium at Six Flags Over Texas, a massive step up from the other. This one got new paint, it looks beautiful, you get plenty of spinning, awesome. Number 76, Pandemonium at Six Flags St. Louis, in my opinion the best one for spinning. That is a bit of a subjective thing though, and still great. Number 75 is Ninja at Six Flags Magic Mountain, an aero suspended coaster. Very fun. You go over water, it's quite intense. The only weird thing is how you have to get back up to the station because of how it's built on a mountain. But you know what? That's not a big dampener in the experience. It's a great family coaster. Number 74 is Raging Cajun at Six Flags America. This one, I don't know if you can count it as a family coaster. It is crazy. You spin a ton. You get thrown out of your seat. This is a very scary ride, frankly. So chaotic, so fun, best Wild Mouse ever, only not ranking higher because I do prefer some of the more conventional thrills. Number 73 is Scream at Six Flags Magic Mountain. This one is definitely less fun than Raging Cajun. There are pluses to it. It still has some good inversions here and there, the loop's not bad and all, but I find the ride to be very poorly paced, giving you a lot of time to appreciate the ugly setting, and then it's pretty painful at some points. It's a very B&M floorless. Not terrible, decent at best, just not one I love. Definitely one where people defend it. I'm not really on the side, unfortunately. Number 72 is Georgia Scorcher at Six Flags Over Georgia. Obviously, this is not one that many would like because it is a stand-up coaster, but I like stand-up coasters a good bit, and this one is a stronger one. I think the inversions are good, intensity is great, smooth the whole way through, a step up from Scream. Number 71 is Thunderbolt at Six Flags New England. The first third of this one is quite fun and thrilling. After that, it does peter out, and it is the kind of thing you could genuinely fall asleep on. I don't really remember what happens in the second half, but the first half, first third, something like that, is pretty good, so it is a nice ride overall. Number 70, hear me out, Ninja at Six Flags St. Louis. People hate Ninja. It's a very weird one for sure, but darn, I had a lot of fun on this one. The inversions, unlike most aero loopers, are the best part of the ride. It is painless on the inversions, whereas a lot of them is to the detriment of the ride. The transitions in between, those can be jankier, but not so much that it ruins the ride like maybe Steam and Demon. And there is a weird near-miss element that's not intentional, I'm pretty sure, and kind of scary, but I love that. I had a good time with Ninja. I do enjoy it a lot more than plenty of other aero loopers, and I think you should give it a chance. Number 69 is the Riddler Revenge at Six Flags New England. This SLC is the best I've been on by default. The restraints are the new ones. Great. Pretty good, you don't get a lot of headbanging. That said, the ride still doesn't run quite as well as some others from what I hear, and it still can be a bit rough because of the poor track profiling, so it's not perfect, but still a good ride. Number 68 is Batman the Dark Knight at Six Flags New England. A very, very smooth, floorless coaster. I used to find it rough, not anymore, thank goodness. The layout is still very average, but it's not as poorly paced as Scream, so it is a bit higher up, and a decent ride overall. Number 67 is Goliath at Six Flags Magic Mountain. A massive hypercoaster, such a grand structure. Unfortunately, it's very much good, not great in every aspect, from the first drop, to the airtime, to even the intensity. It's not excellent. The pacing is the worst aspect due to the fact that the mid-course brake run kinda ruins that pacing, and I realize it is necessary, but that gimmick of the intense helix is just not worth it for me. It's for them to ruin the pacing, so it's not an excellent ride. Number 66 is Great American Scream Machine at Six Flags Over Georgia. This used to be last place for me. Now, I think it's a great ride. I think the airtime moments are quite effective. The setting is very, very massive, and being able to see that whole layout is cool. The ride is kind of rough, and I don't think it is the best wooden coaster layout by any means, but it is a solid classic wooden coaster, and I think it's pretty good overall. Number 65 is West Coast Racers at Six Flags Magic Mountain. There is merit to this one. It races every time, which is nice. I think there are airtime moments, there is some hang time, the launches are punchy. Unfortunately, the restraints are just the worst. My head digs into the side of the weird hard plastic things, and I don't understand why Premiere is just the worst at making restraints. I think the restraints drag this down more than any other coaster I've ever been on, including Sky Rush. So definitely a big dampener, but hey, it is still a good ride, but there are flaws to it. Number 64 is Superman Escape from Krypton at Six Flags Magic Mountain. This one is hard to rank because the backwards section, it ranks right around here. The forward section might not make top 100. The forward section is very, very dull. You go forward, up, yay, and go backward. Despite going 100 miles per hour, it does not feel like that. It feels like 60 max in my opinion. Backwards, you can feel the speed. I do wish this thing had a complete layout, and because of the way the track is and the car is and all, it's not as great as something like Top Thrill Dragster was in terms of the speed, but it's still pretty good, so it gets a bit of a higher spot. Number 63 is the Boss at Six Flags St. Louis. Boss is a weird one. It is good. The intensity is hard to beat, pacing immaculate, setting great, roughness and getting thrown to the side of your seat in a very painful way that would make the legend at Holiday World feel jealous. Unfortunately, that holds the ride back a bit for me. Maybe I'm a bit wimpy for this one in particular, and also Screaming Eagle, but I do stand by it. I think it's a good ride, but it's not one of the great wooden coasters for me. Number 62 is the Wild One at Six Flags America. Over 100 years old, this one runs quite well. Sure, it's janky at points, and there isn't a ton of standout stuff until the ending for me. The finale is great, before that, not a ton. It is a fun classic wooden coaster, and a bit more fun than Great American Scream Machine even, so it gets a bit of a higher spot. Number 61 is Runaway Mine Train at Six Flags Over Texas. Easily the best Aero Mine Train. This ride is awesome. I love it. The final drop is actually terrifying, beyond Dahlonega Mine Train by a long shot and less painful. I don't know how they pulled it off. This ride is a classic for sure. It is well paced, it's a fun setting, it's very smooth for me personally. It's got a bit of a classic jankiness to it, but not a painful one. That's a big plus for me. I love it. The ride is well themed. There's so many compliments I can throw at it. Yes, it is still overall a family coaster outside of that final drop, so it's not extremely high on the list, but it nearly made the top half. So that is quite a high honor for an Aero Mine Train, and I call it one of the most underrated coasters in the world. Number 60 is Shockwave at Six Flags Over Texas. This gets an edge. I do think it is a pretty bumpy aero looper, but the inversions are great, the airtime is solid, and I think if you can handle the back row, this can rank much higher for you. For me, who prefers the front on this one, it sits right around here. Now for my own sake, numbers 59 through 54 are the SNS 40 free spins. I'm not separating them because even though the ride experience is different every time, it's just that. It can be the same ride experience on each of them, different ones in them all. It's hard to really determine which ones are better. But overall, I think these are great roller coasters. They are a bit unpredictable, but in general, I get 2 or 3 full flips. Those can be uncomfortable when you're younger, but I feel as I've gotten older, I am able to tolerate them much better, and in fact get a lot of enjoyment out of the intensity and chaotic nature of the rides. They're very fun, a bit overhated, and I'm very glad that many of the parks have them. Number 53 is Flash Vertical Velocity at Six Flags Great America. This I love. Because I miss Wicked Twister, I'm glad this exists. I think it's pretty fun. You get a good launch forward, backward, forward, backward, forward. Obviously not a very complete layout, but it is definitely a much more intense and thrilling ride than Superman Escape from Krypton, so it gets a higher spot. Number 52 is Riddler's Revenge at Six Flags Magic Mountain. The best stand-up coaster. Unfortunately, it has gotten a bit rough lately. The layout is still awesome. There are some immaculate inversions on there. Unfortunately, they are still sort of held back by a bit of jankiness on quite a bit of the ride. Not as much as Scream, and the layout is much, much better, so that does hold it back a bit though. That roughness does mean it can't quite be top 50. Number 51 is Poltergeist at Six Flags Fiesta, Texas. An incredible queue on this one elevates it a bit. The launch is not very powerful on these Spaghetti Bowl Premier Rides coasters, and this ride itself, it does not get a ton of speed in the second half. That holds it back a little, but still a very fun ride. Number 50 is Joker's Jinx, a clone of Poltergeist. I noted that there's not a lot of speed in the second half on Poltergeist. Joker is the opposite. You build up crazy speed and intensity in the second half. I love it. Fantastic. It is one of the strongest second halves of any Premier Rides coaster. Mind you, most Premier Rides coasters don't really have second halves, but still, I think it is a decent improvement over Poltergeist in that regard. Number 49 is Runaway Mountain at Six Flags Over Texas. the best runaway M roller coaster. This is super underrated. The ride is pitch black, and the second twisty drop on this one is actually a better drop than runaway mine trains. That's saying a lot. The ride is intense, a great facade, does not feel a need to have excellent theming inside like Skull Mountain because it's fully dark, and the ride offers shocking thrills that make it one of the most underrated coasters, one of the best for me rides coasters, excellent ride, highly recommend you give this a chance to understand that it is one of the best indoor roller coasters out there. Number 48, Viper at Six Flags Great America. This wooden coaster is very, very long. It feels like a long ride. It's interesting. I do think it does meander a little bit near the end, but it offers solid airtime, solid intensity, and it's a very well-rounded coaster overall, so it gets a pretty good spot. Number 47 is Predator at Darien Lake. This was a early wooden coaster to get GCI Titan track, which is steel track put on the wooden coaster, and I find this one quite fascinating. The main thing I'll note here is the transitions in and out of Titan track parts is jarring, but it's good in both parts separate of that. There's plenty of airtime on this one, excellent pacing, fantastic intensity. The only issue is the disgusting pillar full of gum in the queue. Number 46 is Comet at Great Escape. Another classic wooden coaster, well kept. The park cares about this much more than anything else in the park for sure. And it has very good airtime. It is a strong classic wooden coaster. Stronger than Predator and Viper for me, for being just a bit more charming and having stronger airtime. Not much else to say about these classic wooden coasters. I'm no aficionado in that regard, but I do think it's a great ride. Number 45 is Tantrum at Darien Lake. An underrated Gerstlauer. Yes, it's short, but what it has works. First drop is great, every inversion works, there are moments of weightlessness for sure. I think it is a very solid Gerstlauer, and a heck of a lot better than some that people prefer. Number 44 is Superman Ultimate Flight at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. I've been on 3 Skyrocket 2s, and the gap between this and Tigris is astonishing. This ride is awesome. The restraints are not comfort collars, instead they are good. The launch, when the tunnel lights up, is so much fun, and there's a good bit of punch in said launches. The hang time on the very slow inversion works super well. The ride feels very complete, the way it kinda stalls at certain moments adds to it, and actually makes the pacing a bit more suspenseful. And I think on a ride like this it works well. I can't quite explain why I enjoy this one as much as I do, but it all just works, unlike Tigris. Number 43 is Full Throttle at Six Flags Magic Mountain. There are some astonishing highs on this ride. The vertical loop, the top hat, the backward launch, all great. But this does not feel as complete as Superman because of the terrible brakes on the top hat. I recognize they had very little space to work with, it's the best they had, but as you're out of your seat, you suddenly get slammed back in very painfully as the ride comes to a close, and it's a bit of a letdown. It holds back the ride for me. This is one of the few rides where it really feels like I have to judge it for what it could have been instead of just what it is, because it does feel incomplete. Number 42 is American Eagle at Six Flags Great America. This ride's not rough. I've only done the blue side because they only run one side at a time, but I found while there is a bit of jankiness in the helix, and the helix has hurt the pacing a little bit, this ride deserves credit for an incredible sense of speed and massive elements, delivering some super strong airtime. This ride is awesome. I think it is an excellent wooden coaster, and definitely one of the best in the Six Flags chain. Number 41 is Apocalypse the ride at Six Flags Magic Mountain. A GCI that doesn't have a ton of airtime. What it does have is good, and the intensity of this one is quite strong. The pacing is immaculate. It's not quite up there with something like Prowler at Worlds of Fun, but it's good. I think it's an excellent ride overall, and the only thing holding it back a little is what I mentioned with the airtime, and in general, it feels like a bit of a smaller stakes GCI, but still, most GCIs are great. This one is no exception. Number 40 is Superman Ride of Steel at Six Flags America. A very flawed hypercoaster. The first drop, some of the airtime hills, the helix, these are great moments. Unfortunately, the cars are pretty cramped, and there's another major setback for me, and that is the long straight track bits that feel like they go on forever. They do hinder the pacing a bit, and I think tighter elements A bit of tightening up in that whole layout could go a long way for this one. Number 39 is Ride of Steel at Six Flags Darien Lake, getting an edge for a wonderful over-the-water setting, and I guess being the original, I don't know, but it's really just a setting. Number 38 is Batwing at Six Flags America. I love Vekoma Flying Dutchmans. They are awesome rides. This one has excellent highlights like all of them. The vertical loop is super intense. The helix is close to the ground and terrifying. Of course, the one big issue with these is that when you're going up the lift hill, you're staring straight at the sun normally. So that can be a bit bad, but the ride itself after the lift hill is awesome. And people don't like these rides in general, but I don't know. I don't get roughness on them. I think they're awesome. Number 37 is Batman the Ride at Six Flags Over Texas, the first of 7 Batman the Ride clones. I love them all, and they happen to be all ranked next to each other, so I know some will get mad at me for separating them, but I do think there are differences. I've ranked them all once, even separately, but there are some changes since then. This one is the roughest and worst paced, so it's held back a bit. Number 36 is Le Vampire at La Ronde, a bit underwhelming compared to others, but still very strong ride, of course. Number 35 is Goliath at Fiesta, Texas. You get foot numbness in this one a lot more than others, but not quite as much intensity. That holds it back a little, but still, of course, excellent intense ride. Number 34 is Batman the Ride at Six Flags St. Louis. I like the colors of this one a lot. I think it's an awesome ride. It's not really held back by anything. Others are just a bit stronger. Number 33 is Batman the Ride at Six Flags Great Adventure, a very intense one, especially compared to the last few I've said, but a few are even stronger. Number 32 is Batman the Ride at Six Flags Magic Mountain, even more intense. Excellent. Number 31 is Batman the Ride at Six Flags Over Georgia, the most intense of them all. But number 30 is Batman the Ride at Six Flags Great America. This one is the original. The setting works so well with this one. It adds so much to the ride, and it's almost as intense as Over Georgia or Magic Mountain, so I think it is the best, most complete, most charming, most enjoyable of all Batman the Ride clones. Alright, now we're done with that. Number 29 is Mr. Freeze Reverse Blast at Six Flags St. Louis. This can be a bit janky and not always the most intense, but this layout is the coolest Premier Rise has done. You have an inverted top hat, an overbent curve, and a spike. That's it, yet somehow it feels so complete. I can't quite explain it, but I think it's a very complete, excellent ride, and the best at Six Flags St. Louis. Number 28 is Titan at Six Flags Over Texas. What a crazy ride. It is massively better than Goliath for a number of reasons. First of all, it is consistently more intense. It's not just the helix on this one. This thing does not let up besides the mid-course brake run on intensity, and I love that. The first drop is also underwhelming like Goliath, but the pacing and intensity are much better here, and I remember so much more about the experience. I think it's an awesome ride, and this one, unlike Goliath, is a bit overhated. Number 27 is Daredevil Dive at Six Flags Over Georgia. A very strong Gerstlauer coaster. The only thing I dislike is a bit of weaker pacing in the second half, but the small theming elements add a lot here. The elements are all very tight, it's a very well thought out layout, the intensity and speed are fantastic even on the slower parts, the inversions all do what they should, the first drop like any Gerstlauer is strong, it is definitely among the best Gerstlauer coasters I've been on. Number 26 is Superman Ultimate Flight at Six Flags Great Adventure. I am a sucker for flying coasters, and this one is no exception. From the pretzel loop, to the inversion, to the graceful but very fast intense twists, to that whole sensation where you really do feel like you're flying. I think this ride is a home run. Number 25 is Superman Ultimate Flight at Six Flags Great America. A slight step up for being a bit more intense for me, and the setting being a bit stronger, but not much else. Number 24 is Max Force at Six Flags Great America. A tough one. This launch is the fastest acceleration in the US, in North America in fact, but I don't think it's a great ride. The weird double inversion after it is decent. The zero G roll is awesome, easily the highlight of the ride for me. And then you kind of turn back into the station and that's it. It's kind of like Full Throttle in that regard. I do think the best elements beat Full Throttle, and it definitely feels a whole lot faster. But I don't know, the launch is not quite strong enough to bolster it, but that zero G roll does help quite a lot. Number 23 is Medusa at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. The best of the B&M floorless coasters are super underrated. Very complete, near flawless rides. This one is smooth, has a unique inversion in the Sidewinder, it's well paced, it's intense. There's nothing I dislike about it besides maybe the setting, but setting doesn't mean a whole lot on a fast coaster like this. Number 22 is Medusa at Six Flags Great Adventure. This one has the same layout as Scream, which I genuinely cannot believe. This one is so much more intense, has much better inversions, the pacing is better in every single aspect, and the weird theming elements that don't fit with Medusa at all now are awesome. Whether it be working fire unlike a certain Six Flags Magic Mountain coaster we'll get to, or some of the weird other near-miss things they have going on, it's awesome. I love this ride. It's one of the most well-rounded B&M coasters, period. Definitely an excellent one. Number 21 is Superman Krypton Coaster at Six Flags Fiesta, Texas. The best floorless in the chain, not quite as well-rounded, but the best stuff is even better than those. The vertical loop is awesome. The way it plays with the quarry wall and setting, perfect. That adds so much to the ride, making it an even better ride than the Medusas. Number 20 is Superman Ultimate Flight at Six Flags Over Georgia. The original, that adds a lot to it. You go through a tunnel, you go just over the station, you can feel the wind in the station. The way it plays with that hill does add a lot to the experience, adds to the whole flying sensation even more, and it is definitely an excellent ride. Number 19 is Twisted Cyclone at Six Flags Over Georgia. My least favorite of RMC's roller coasters. This one has its positives. First drop is good like on any of them. The inversions are solid here. You have your airtime moments. Unfortunately, this one does come up short on pacing and duration compared to pretty much every RMC, but it's still good. I don't think it is the best coaster out there, definitely the weakest RMC, but there's no bad RMCs, so it's still pretty high on the list. Number 18 is Mr. Freeze Reverse Blast at Six Flags Over Texas. I've not done the forward version on this, but I can tell you, this is a night and day thing for Mr. Freeze's, just like with Skyrocket 2's or Scream and Medusa. This one is awesome. It is smoother, it feels faster, it is more intense, it looks better. Everything is better than the St. Louis one compared to that one. Over Texas is better. It is the best Premier Rides coaster. If you get lucky, you can have a really fun, timed, sort of near-miss looking thing with Mini Mine Train. I think it is one of the best launch coasters out there. It is a blast. A reverse blast, in fact. Bad joke, great ride. Number 17 is Goliath at La Ronde. This is kind of underrated, but no one really talks about it. I guess that's the main reason why. I'm sure people enjoy it. It is just airtime moments, but that airtime is great. It's floater, the setting is cool, you go to the back of a narrow island, and the final airtime is borderline ejector. So while not the best of B&M hyper-type roller coasters out there, it is a blast, it's fun, I have fun with this model in general, and it's not the strongest, but it's still very, very strong. Number 16 is X2 at Six Flags Magic Mountain. I've discussed this before, X2 is just not my thing entirely. The first half is very, very intense. The first drop and the inversion afterwards are awesome. I love those. The lift hill is possibly the best part of the ride. It's just so chaotic and unique. Unfortunately, the final third, heck even maybe the second half, is not nearly as crazy and is much more painful. The final turn is incredibly rough. And I'm very impressed that people can look past that to think X2 is one of the best coasters in the world, because it is nowhere near that for me. But still, it is a great ride, even if it is pretty overrated. Number 15 is Nitro at Six Flags Great Adventure. This is my least favorite of Six Flags' full-scale B&M hypers, but that doesn't mean it's bad. It isn't really worse than the others by much, it just doesn't stand out as much to me. The airtime is still great, I do think the turnaround is fun, the setting is cool, I just think others are better. It's no fault of this one, it's just kind of a bit weaker, and that does mean it falls a bit shorter in the list. Number 14 is X-Flight at Six Flags Great America. B&M wing coasters rock. I love them all, and this one is awesome. The intensity of this one is even stronger than Gatekeeper at Cedar Point. The inversions all land. The near-miss elements might be the best on this one. Thunderbird probably takes that one, honestly, but they're still great. There's nothing I dislike outside of the finale being a bit rough in select seats and the restraints being a bit uncomfortable on select rides. But it's only one ride for each of those out of quite a few. Not to mention, this ride looks gorgeous when you're off-ride. So it is an awesome wing coaster, underrated one, not rough. It is a great, underrated, amazing roller coaster. You should go on it. You should see that I'm right, you may not, but you know what, I think it's pretty awesome. Number 13 is Jersey Devil Coaster at Six Flags Great Adventure. No longer my least favorite RMC because even though the restraints are not great, in fact, they're not good, this ride is awesome. The first drop, the airtime hills, the stall, the pacing, the length, this does fix some of the flaws with Railblazer. It's not as whippy, which does hold it back a bit, but this beats some RMCs of the full-scale hybrid or wooden type, so I think it's a bit overhated. Restraints hold it back maybe a little, but besides that, I love it. Number 12 is Goliath at Six Flags Great America. There are spectacular elements on this one. The first drop, the stall, the dive loop, these are top tier RMC. Unfortunately, this is the roughest RMC for me, and beyond that, it is pretty short. It doesn't feel as complete as a few other rides on here, even some rides below it on this list. That said, the standout elements are some of the most standout in the whole chain, so it gets a bit of a higher spots. Number 11 is Tatsu at Six Flags Magic Mountain. Tatsu is the perfect roller coaster. It has smooth, graceful stuff, as most B&M flying coasters do. It has immaculate terrain, probably the best terrain usage besides one coaster on this whole list. And then you have crazy intense moments. The pretzel loop is the single best inversion in the chain, bar none. That's awesome. I do wish I could give it a top 10 spot. There are just some that, even though this one's technically perfect in the sense that it's pretty flawless, there are others I do enjoy a bit more for some individual aspects. That said, if this is number 1 on your list, I would not even argue. Starting the top 10 is Raging Bull at Six Flags Great America. This ride is not as thrilling as Tatsu, or Jersey Devil, or even X-Flight, but it is so much fun. The first drop is the main thrilling aspect. It is one of the best first drops out there. Great start. Beyond that, it is just a long, smooth, graceful, decently forceful ride with great pacing, a unique twister layout, going in and out of tunnels, up above the queue and all that. I just have fun with it. I think it's super enjoyable, and that alone made it top 10 worthy for me. I know it's not the best in terms of individual elements really, but I enjoy this ride so much. I think it is one of the most fun in the entire chain. Best at Great America, definitely a bit underrated. Number 9 is El Toro at Six Flags Great Adventure. Okay, here we go. Another overrated one for me. I'm sorry. I've not been on since the retrack, so I can't judge off that. But before that, there is no such thing as a painless ride on El Toro. And yes, some of the best rides can be painful. In fact, Voyage at Holiday World can be painful. But Voyage is better than this one for me. The first half of El Toro, let's say, is immaculate. First drop, it shuts down Raging Bull easily. Airtime hills, insane. After that, it's just a well-paced, solid wooden coaster, not on the same level as some of the RMCs and similar that are above it. I'll get to those later. Overall, great ride, but it is flawed and not quite by number 1. Number 8 is Goliath at Six Flags Over Georgia. Super well-rounded B&M hyper. First drop is very solid, up there with Raging Bull in fact. The floater airtime is awesome. The helix is intense. The setting is cool how you go outside of the park. And the final airtime hills are more ejector. So it is the best Goliath in the chain, which is saying quite a bit, honestly. And overall, those who think it is the best hyper, they have a fair point. It is a great ride. Number 7 is Wicked Cyclone at Six Flags New England. One of the stronger RMC hybrids in the chain, sort of, I guess, not really. It's one of the lower on this list, but it's still a very good one. A huge step up from Twisted Cyclone. Only held back by the final third not being super well paced, but the first two have an incredible sense of speed, awesome inversions, excellent airtime, everything that makes a great RMC. So it is relatively less distinguishable from some of the best, things like Steel Vengeance or Iron Gwazi, but it's still a strong ride, even if not quite that caliber. Number 6, hear me out, New Texas Giant at Six Flags Over Texas. This one, unlike the last third of Wicked Cyclone being a bit slow, has a slower second half. But I can't help it, I love this one. The first drop is awesome, every overbank turn is great, the pacing in this first half is immaculate. The tunnels at the end feel like they add speed to the ride. I have more fun with this one than Wicked Cyclone, even if that one may technically be a better layout. I love New Texas Giant. It is one of my favorite roller coasters. It's definitely a blast, and I'm very glad I got a pretty high spot on the list. Number 5 is the Joker at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. Very grateful to have experienced this one. It is incredible. It doesn't have the best first drop in my opinion, but after that, it feels much longer than Wicked Cyclone and pretty much longer than New Texas Giant. Very close between those two, honestly. The airtime is better than both. The inversions are significantly better than both, especially since one doesn't have inversions. But Joker is some of the best inversions of any RMC. I think some consider it lower tier, but for me, it is probably top half of RMCs, which is actually a much higher bar of praise than it may sound like. I think Joker is incredibly well-rounded, and after the decent but not great first drop, there's nothing I dislike about it, and it is phenomenal. Number 4 is King Dakar at Six Flags Great Adventure. This ride is simple. Launch, go up tallest hill in the world, go over some smaller hill, done. It feels like forever. This launch is not going to take you by surprise in terms of the acceleration like Top Thrill Dragster used to, but the speed it builds up is more than you can get on any roller coaster in the world besides one. And you feel that, especially in the front row. This ride is an adrenaline rush like no other. I adore this one. And even though there are more complete layouts that do get a bit of an edge for me, I love this one, and it absolutely, no question, made the top 5. There was no doubt in my mind I was going to do that. Number 3 is Superman the Ride at Six Flags New England. The best of the DC coasters in the chain. Superman the Ride gets some flack for its restraints. I don't mind them. I think they can sometimes be bad, but really don't inhibit the ride nearly as much as things like most RMCs, frankly. But Superman the Ride has a perfect layout. The first drop is a strong, intimate one with beautiful views. The airtime, especially the random ejector hill before the twister section, is crazy. I love it. The theming elements are small but add a good bit. The music as you go up the hill does make you feel like Superman. The intensity of the second half is awesome. The way it weaves through the main walking area. This ride is honestly a marvel of engineering. I love it. It is definitely the best traditional hypercoaster out there, and one of the best coasters in the Six Flags chain. Number 2 is Iron Rattler at Six Flags Fiesta, Texas. This is the one I was mentioning with Tatsu earlier having a better setting. You go through the quarry, over the quarry, on top of the quarry. It's awesome. The first drop is a stronger RMC one, once again saying quite a lot. The inversions are great. The part on the quarry wall is not as slow as some say, in my opinion. It keeps its speed super well, and the drop off the quarry wall is awesome. This ride is not as long as Joker, it doesn't feel like that anyway, but it has an unbeatable sense of speed, terrain usage, pacing. It is one of the strongest RMCs. I adore this one, and since I could not get on Golden Lasso Coaster, this was more than suitable as a top ride in the park, and it probably still would be even if I did get on Wonder Woman. But number 1 is Twisted Colossus at Six Flags Magic Mountain. In my opinion, this one is now getting a bit too much hate. Hate is a strong word, but some are now saying it is a low-tier RMC because of the lack of dueling. In my opinion, without dueling, just like American Eagle, it is still an awesome ride. The first drop is far from the tallest, as far as RMCs go, but it feels almost as strong as Steel Vengeance or Iron Quasis. The airtime moments are super hard to beat. The inversions, once again, excellent. And you get 2 complete layouts. In fact, I dare say, one individual layout of Twisted Colossus would be top 10 on this list for sure. And you get 2 of them. It's such an interesting experience, even without the dueling. Now, with dueling, this would not be any higher on the list, because it's number 1. I think even without dueling, Twisted Colossus is an unbeatable roller coaster in the Six Flags chain, and personally, my number one. Thank you for watching. This list was super tough to put together, so I would really appreciate it if you like this video, share it to some of your friends, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more theme park content. It was a very tough one to make, but I'll be making bigger and better projects. Hopefully the next one will be even better than this one. I'll see you next time.